In this video, I'm going to show you how to factor trinomials using an area model. So first, I just want to remind you how we got to this answer. So if I ask you to multiply x plus 3 by x minus 5, you got x squared minus 5x plus 3x minus 15. So it technically has 4 terms. However, we usually have two middle terms that could be combined together, and our final answer in simplified form would look like this. So our 4-term expression turned into a trinomial. So think of this as a 4-term expression where we combined two like terms in the middle and it became a trinomial. So we need to figure out what two terms we had in order to get 6p. So you start here, and I know that these two terms combined together will give me 6p, but I'm not really sure how I got there. So we need to figure that out. As always, we put our highest term with the highest exponent in upper left and our term with lowest exponent in lower right. So the first thing I'm going to notice is that this is just a p squared. The only way for you to get p squared as the first term is if you have p times p. Now I need to figure out what goes here. Whenever you use an area model, something that always happens is that your product across this diagonal is always equal to the product going across this diagonal. What this means is that the two numbers we're looking for will also have to multiply to negative 40, because 1 times negative 40 is negative 40, and when I combine the two like terms, when I add them, I want to get 6 as my coefficient. So I'm going to look for two numbers that multiply to negative 40 and add up to positive 6. And the two numbers that I have are going to be, or I need, are going to be negative 4 and 10. And if I add them, it gives me 6, and if I multiply, it gives me negative 40. So this is going to be negative 4p and 10p. It doesn't actually matter which one goes where, as long as your highest and your lowest exponent are in the right spot. So now this turns into a problem just like before, where we had 4 terms, where we just work backwards. I already know that this was a p, so over here I need negative 4. I got this to be negative 40, so over here I needed 10. And I'm done. In factored form, it's going to be, the area is going to look like p plus 10 times p minus 4. Now, if you're having trouble finding the two numbers, what I try to recommend is just go through all the pairs of numbers that multiply to 40. And eventually you have to find the pair. So 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 3 doesn't go into 40, but 4 does. And eventually you'll come to a pair that is 6 away from each other. So you'll know that this is going to be the right pair of numbers, and you'll just have to figure out which one has to be negative. So in this case, if they had to add up to positive 6, that means that the 10 had to be positive and the 4 has to be negative. Okay, so here's another one for us. I'm going to start filling this out. I know this is going to be n squared. I know this is going to be negative 10. I just have to figure out what two terms have to be here so that when I combine them, they're going to give me negative 3. So diagonally, these two numbers, the coefficients, 1 and negative 10, multiply to negative 10. So my two numbers I'm looking for also have to multiply to negative 10. And when I add them together, I want to get a negative 3. So the two numbers that multiply to negative 10 but add up to negative 3 are going to be negative 5 and a positive 2. So the two terms that I have are going to be negative 5n and 2n. And if I combine them, I do get negative 3n. So this is n squared, which means I had to have n and n. I don't have to think much about it. And then if I got this to be negative 5n, I had to have negative 5. I got this to be negative 10, so this has to be positive 2. And if I take a second and I double check everything, I'll notice that everything looks great. And my answer is going to be length times width of this rectangle. So n plus 2 times n minus 5. Okay, so I start by filling up my boxes. Diagonally, coefficients multiply to -6, so I'm going to also look for two numbers that multiply to -6. When I combine my terms and I add them, I'm going to get a 5. So the two numbers are going to be -1 and a +6. So I should have -1n and +6n. Okay, so this is n squared. I know I have to have n times n. I'm going to work backwards. This has to be -1, and this came out to be -6, which means that this has to be 6. So my area can be expressed in factored form as n plus 6 times n minus 1. And here our last example. We're going to fill out our box. My two coefficients on this diagonal have to multiply to 3. So the two numbers I'm going to look for over here also have to multiply to +3. And when I add them together, the two terms have to combine and give me -4. So -1 and -3 are going to work for us. So the two terms I have is going to be -1p and -3p. I know that my upper left box is p squared, so I have to have p and p. This has to be -1 and this has to be -3. Double check, everything works out. So in factored form, the area of this rectangle is going to be p minus 1 times p minus 3.